Do you need a landscaping job tackled? Keen Landscaping is a family-owned and operated full-service landscaping company based in Dallas, Texas. Anything from property restoration and tree pruning or removal to landscape design, construction, and installation, Keen covers it all. They're also the official landscape company of the Dallas Stars. Learn more at keenlandscaping.com. Again, that's Keane, landscaping.com. Welcome to Parker's MMA Show. If you want to learn about all things going down in the fight world, you've come to the right place. Each episode, your host Parker Keene will take a deeper dive into the always entertaining world of sanctioned fist fighting. Now here's your host, Parker Keene.
We're back. Parker's MMA Show, episode 44. We got a lot to talk about. We've been on a little hiatus, but we're back. We're like college football. We were taking a little bit of break, and now we're back to action. So, hey, let's get after it. Billy, episode 44. We got a lot to dive into. We're going to review the last couple cards, and then we're going to dive deep into UFC 252, give you a little preview of the trilogy this weekend with DC and Stipe Miocic. Like always, like, subscribe, share, do all those good things. Billy, let's get right into it. So I want to start with the fight from a couple weeks ago. Darren Till taking on Robert Whittaker. What were your initial thoughts of the fight?
You know, I was good to see Rob kind of come back, not only like from the loss to Israel Adesanya, but he came back in this fight, gets knocked down in the first round, and you know, when a guy gets knocked out, then knocked down in the first round, I think as MMA fans, the tendency is to think, you know, the guy's chin's gone, right? But it was good to see him come back. I thought he mixed up the striking with his wrestling really well. I thought the oblique kick was really effective. I think Darren Till's a great striker, and Rob kind of stood and banged with him for most of that fight and came out on the other end doing well. So I thought it was a great fight. What did you think?
I agree. I think it was a good technical fight, kind of showed where both guys are right now. You know, both guys obviously still young. Rob's got a lot more UFC experience, obviously a former title holder, but just an all-around great technical fight. I agree with you. The durability of Rob was kind of a question mark, and it always is in my mind, you know, especially after those 10 rounds he went through with Yoel Romero. But it was good to see that, you know, he took some big shots. He got knocked down in the first round. He survived, and we really saw, I think, a really, really good version of Robert Whittaker. And the fight kind of went the way we said it would go. You know, Rob is just, in my opinion, a much better all-around fighter, and he showcased that. I mean, he used everything. He mixed up his striking great. He took away that lead leg of Darren Till. He took out that knee in the second round, which I hate watching those kicks, the oblique kicks, but they're super effective. I mean, yeah, they're my least favorite strike probably in MMA, but they're super effective. I mean, you have one of the best strikers in the world in Darren Till limited to one leg, and he can't do everything in his arsenal. So, yeah, so for Rob, you know, I think he looked really good. For Darren Till, I think he shows where he's at. I mean, you know, I think some people doubted him moving up to this weight class, but he's indeed, like I said on our last episode, I think he's world class. He can compete with any of those guys. He's still very, very young. He's got a long way to go. He's got a very high ceiling. So this is one of those fights where I don't think anyone really loses anything. You know, it was a great fight all around. Darren Till's obviously going to be out for a little bit. You know, I think Rob's going to be wanting to get back in the mix pretty soon to work his way back to his title. So
haven't they booked him against
What do you think? Yeah, they did. Sorry. They booked that this week. So I think it's, October? It's a pretty quick turnaround. So, you know, I think that's the right matchup. Yeah, I think that's a clear number one contender fight for whoever wins the Izzy versus Paulo Costa fight. So, yeah, I was glad to see Rob get back to kind of championship form, and he just proves I mean, how tough of a draw he is. You know, he was mixing up great and looked really good against Darren Till. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think overall that was a great fight. What did you think about the Shogun versus Nogueira trilogy?
a fun, old guy fight. I'm glad to see Lil Nog hang it up. Shogun has sneakily won 5 of 6 here, so I'm like a little worried we're gonna see him get fed to a lion. I kind of want to see Shogun against Alexander Gustafsson in the rematch.
At heavyweight or light heavyweight?
Light heavyweight.
Yeah. I agree. It was probably the best. It really reminded me of a Bellator fight, but it was a fun Bellator, old guy throwdown. That was a really fun fight and a great end to a trilogy that spanned over 15 years from Pride to the UFC. So, very good fight by those guys. And then we had on that card as well, Gustafsson making his debut at heavyweight. Didn't go as planned. I was a little shocked by that one. Verdum basically made quick work of him, and it kind of puts him in a weird spot. Like, I don't know if he wants to hang around at heavyweight, look for another fight, or does he try to jump back in at light heavyweight right now? Because he seems inspired and like he wants to fight and, like he's got more left in the tank. So where do you think Gus goes from here?
I thought he looked really bad in this fight. I thought he looked pretty bad in the Anthony Smith fight where he initially retired. I definitely think light heavyweight is his weight class, but I'm starting to wonder if Gus isn't further past his prime than maybe we think he is.
Yeah, I'd like to see him give it another try at heavyweight. I don't think we got to see a lot of probably what he was working on or the best that he can be at that weight class. You didn't get to see much. I mean, basically, Verdum got the takedown, finished the fight, in half the first round. So I think there's a lot of fun matchups for him at heavyweight. Like Alexander Volkov would be a great just stand-up striking match between those two guys.
It's too much for him, though.
I don't know. I think those guys match up well, especially with the added height and the striking ability. I just think he's going to struggle with the bigger wrestlers. Like he would struggle with Curtis Blades or people like that are just going to take him down and beat him up.
He's not even close. He's not even close to that echelon at heavyweight, in my opinion. Like I would not give him anyone in the top 15 at heavyweight right now. Like I just do not think that's his division. Fabricio Verdum wouldn't be top 15 in the heavyweights either.
He looked a lot better in this fight, though, than he did in his last one against Alexei Oleinik. In that fight, he just looked slow and like he was like a step behind the whole time. He looked pretty sharp against Gustafsson. But I don't know. I personally think Gustafsson has more to offer at heavyweight. I think there's a lot of fun fights you can make. Like I said, Volkov, if Rumble Johnson jumps in at heavyweight, they've got a history. Rumble knocked him out back in 2015 in Stockholm. That would be a fun fight at heavyweight and something you could do right away. You're not buying it, huh?
I could get down with that. I could get down with Rumble. But you're feeding him to Alexander Volkov and Overeem. You're trying to get this man killed, Parker.
I just think he matches up better against those guys. I don't know. I think he could grow into that frame. He's a freaking huge guy. He's a 6'6" Viking. I mean, the guy can mature and grow into that weight, and he was like 31, 32 years old, which is a freaking baby for heavyweight. For light heavyweight, that's a big ask for someone that's towards the end of their run to jump back in against those guys. I mean, that's crazy. But I don't know. I'd like to see Gus do one more at heavyweight, see how it goes, give him a favorable matchup with a striker that's going to stand with him, and see how he does. So little bit of a letdown. I had a lot higher hopes for Gustafsson. Let's move on to this next card. So I caught the main event. This was a lot of fun. Derek Brunson turns back the hype train that is Edmund Shabazyan. I don't know if either of us saw this coming. Did we both pick Shabazyan?
For sure. We definitely both picked Shabazyan, as did everyone else.
Yeah. Derek Brunson just kind of shocked the world a little bit with that one. Huge win for him. I mean, what did you think of the win for Brunson?
He's always kind of been he only really loses to guys who are like pretty consistently in the top 5 at middleweight, right? So he's kind of the litmus test. If you remember, like, Izzy fought Brad Tavares and then fought Brunson and beat them both. And, like, that's kind of what they set up for Shabazyan to do. But, you know, I just think this allows him to kind of retain his spot. I think, and you know what? He showed why he was an All-American wrestler in that cage.
Yeah, that second and third round, I mean, he just took him down pretty much at will and just beat him to death. I mean, he finished the fight in the second round. I thought Herb Dean could have called that fight there. He hit him with a big shot with 1 second left in the round, and Shabazyan was in big trouble. So that was a huge win. And yeah, you look at Derek Brunson's losses, and I mean they're to the elite of elite at middleweight. Outside of, he had an early loss to Kendall Grove, but he's got Yoel Romero he lost to, Anderson Silva he lost to Jacare twice, and then he lost to Izzy. So those are his 7
Rob
losses.
Whittaker.
Which, I mean, that's the top of the heap. And Rob Whittaker, sorry. So, yeah, that was a big win for
And look,
Brunson.
he won the Anderson Silva fight. I don't know if you remember this, Parker. I believe it's UFC 208 in Brooklyn. Like, Anderson Silva and Brunson fought to, like, a very weird split decision. Like, he won that fight. He should have won that 2 rounds to 1.
Yeah, so I mean, at 36 years old, he's still there. I think everyone was kind of writing him off, like you said, as a gatekeeper for that division, but he proved a lot of people wrong. So it's great win for him. So for Shabazyan, where does he go from here? Obviously, still a young guy, 22 years old, got a lot more to offer in this game. What do you think's next for him?
Yeah, he's got to go back to the drawing board for me, because Derek Brunson is far from the most elite wrestler in the middleweight division, and he manhandled Edmund Shabazyan. So I would almost like to see him take some time off, potentially, not change coaches, but maybe go visit a couple different camps, find some guys who are maybe better wrestlers or grappling guys that you could train with, and really hone in on that ground game and work on it, because his striking is still great. I mean, he still looks snappy in that first round. He's just got to work on his takedown defense and then how to get up once he gets taken down.
Yeah, I think just I don't know, just like the gas tank. Like, I think he was expecting to go in there and blow the doors off of Derek Brunson, and when he didn't, Derek Brunson was still there in the second and third round. I mean, he didn't have a lot to give to him. Derek Brunson pretty much, like you said, took him down at will, held positions, just beat him up. So, yeah, I agree with you. I'd like to see him maybe move around, get a couple different looks, and just improve that gas tank. Because once you get in the top 10, I mean, you're not going to starch everyone in the first round. You've got to learn how to pace the fight, get through those rounds, fight grueling fights, especially with the guys that are going to try to take you down and grapple you and neutralize your striking. So, yeah, I think, 5-10 years from now, when we look back on this loss, if he does eventually make it and be a champion like we think he can be, this will be one of those just, learning stepping stones where, you learn a lot from this fight, you get better, you come back stronger, and I mean, he's very, very young. So, not the end of the world for Shabazyan here, but I think he'll be back. Anything else? Any closing words about that fight?
No, I hope Brunson gets one of his, losses back in his next fight, because that guy has really fought the elite of the elite.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think? What's next for Derek Brunson?
Oof. I wouldn't, now that Yoel Romero,
what did he come in at 10?
Yeah, so now that Yoel Romero is out of the Uriah Hall fight, I would not mind seeing Brunson step in and fight Uriah Hall again.
Who did someone step in for that already, or did they postpone that?
I haven't seen if anyone.
Yeah, that would
has.
make a lot of sense. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I think Brunson went into that fight he's at 9 now. So yeah, that'd be a fun matchup in the top 10 there. But yeah, anyway, really, really good win for Derek Brunson. kind of pretty much hold his ground there in the middleweight division. All right, moving on to UFC 254. It went down last weekend. One of me and Billy's favorite fighters, a Black Beast, was back in action with the jort-wearing Russian dad, Alexei Oleinik. And it was a little dicey in the first round for the Black Beast. I was not a fan of the game plan, but he survived. He didn't get choked out, and he did what the Black Beast does. He comes back, throwing some flying crazy shit, and then just hits you with those hammers, rocks you, gets you to the ground, and just monkey fists you to death. There's nothing scarier to watch on live television than the Black Beast on mount just unloading his lunchbox hammers on people's head. It's so violent. But, the Black Beast with another huge win in the heavyweight division to keep running towards the top again. So, what were your thoughts on the main event there?
I mean, Derrick Lewis has the most knockouts in the heavyweight division in the UFC in its entire history. The longest running division in MMA. He's a UFC Hall of Famer. Derrick Lewis is going to be a UFC Hall of 100%. Famer. How unbelievable is that? I mean, like you said, got very nervous with the scarf hold arm triangle that Oleinik was trying to pull off. Derrick Lewis, I think the biggest thing was his willingness to engage on the ground. I mean, here's a guy who we think of as a pure striker, who never likes to get taken to the ground, who always does basically just stand up to get out of grappling holds. He was in legitimate jiu-jitsu positions against Alexei Oleinik, and he was able to prevent a lot of those attacks and actually hold him off until the second round, where he just absolutely demolishes him and puts him to sleep. So I was pretty impressed with this performance from Derrick Lewis.
I agree. I think this is the best we've seen him look the last couple fights. He's been on a pretty serious strength and conditioning program. He's thinned up. He just honestly seems like he's taking it more seriously. I think that loss to DC, where he basically just got walked through against DC, maybe motivated him to take this more seriously, and he realizes how much money he can make because he's a huge draw. I mean, Derrick Lewis could headline pretty much any UFC card. He's one of those fighters, just super fun. He's going to come and knock people out, and fans love to see that. And I think if he can, keep going on the same path he's on, he could be in that heavyweight division for 4 or 5 more years, fighting big fights and knocking dudes out. And if Derrick Lewis goes on to have, 15, 16, 17 KOs in the heavyweight division, I mean, he's going to be a Hall of Famer, and he might go down as a top 10 heavyweight of all time if he can keep knocking out these, world-class guys. So, huge win for Derrick Lewis. So what is the significance, you think, of this win for him in the heavyweight division right now?
Well, I just think, this is now a guy who has proven that, maybe he's not the champion, and he lost his shot at the heavyweight belt, but this is a guy who's proven that he is a legitimate top 5 heavyweight in the world. And, clearly he doesn't, I think for large portions of his UFC career, he hasn't liked MMA at all. He's said numerous times, this is a job to me. And it's kind of amazing to me that this guy could be one of the best, most dangerous fighters in the world and seemingly just not even enjoy the sport. I love his comment after that. He's one of the baddest blue belts in Texas. Unbelievable. Just he's such the definition of a prize fighter, and to watch him kind of grow into someone who's, I'm not going to call him a true mixed martial artist or a complete martial artist, but a guy who can at least hold his own against the most elite grapplers in the world, in the sport, and then just like you said, throw those lunch boxes and put guys to sleep. That's what a story this guy is. This is there will never be another character like Derrick Lewis. Treasure this guy while we have him, because what he's doing is unheard of in our sport.
He's the best. And then He's giving shout-outs to all his buddies in Houston after the fight, giving shout-outs to his favorite chicken place and his car dealer and everything. Derrick Lewis is the best. He's one of the best characters in MMA probably ever. And I agree. I think every fight you've got to just enjoy the whole show that is Derrick Lewis, because he's definitely once in a lifetime, especially at heavyweight. The dude's awesome. And Parker,
you're
the
how about
jiu-jitsu
this?
guy, Billy. Yeah.
Who reps their city harder than Derrick Lewis reps Houston? I mean, that guy walked out to Tops Dropping by Fat Pat. Like, they need to put a statue in Houston of Derrick Lewis, because this guy is he might as well be the mayor at this point. Like, I don't know why he's not the most popular guy in all of Houston, because nobody reps it harder.
If he keeps doing this and knocking people out, he will be. Yeah, I mean, for sure. So, all right, Billy, you're the jiu-jitsu guy. What did you think of the improvement from the Black Beast in the grappling and jiu-jitsu department?
Amazing. I was amazed, Parker. I mean, Derrick Lewis's defense is usually just get his back taken and then tripod up and slide the guy forward and sneak out the back door, which is like anyone who's ever grappled no gi will tell you that's the most BS grappling defense in the entire world. Derrick Lewis withstood scarf holds from Alexei Olenek. He took him down at points and went to side control with Alexei Olenek. I mean, Derrick Lewis really did jiu-jitsu in the octagon. And if Derrick Lewis ever learns to grapple, the entire world is on notice, because that's a scary man.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. All right, so big win there for the Black Beast. What do you think's next for him at the heavyweight division right now?
I think it will be Curtis Blades, and I am fine with either Curtis Blades or Alistair Overeem, with my one caveat being, if both heavyweight men fighting this weekend retire, I think they should do Francis Ngannou against Derrick Lewis 2 for the vacant heavyweight belt.
That would be wild. I don't know. Of course, I want him versus Francis. I think that's the no-brainer. That's the fight to make. The first one was a total dud. The second one, there's no way it's going to be anything remotely close to that. So, yeah, that's my number one fight. The Curtis Blades fight, that's what they should do with the rankings, but that's a terrible matchup for Derrick Lewis, especially, if you're looking to build this guy as your just knockout king, knockout artist of the heavyweight division. That's a terrible matchup for him. I mean, that could be takedown city and just, yeah.
So here's the thing. I don't disagree with you. On paper, it's a terrible matchup. But let's remember, Curtis Blades is not Khabib. He does not fight like Khabib. It is not suffocating. It is not mauling. He's a power takedown guy who sets up his takedowns from distance with strikes and then comes in and blast doubles you and holds you on the mat by controlling your legs. It's not Khabib with ground and pound. So, I genuinely think Curtis Blades is susceptible to getting hit, and he does poorly against guys who have big power, like Francis. So I think there is a very good chance that he leaves his chin up, or he comes in for a blast double takedown, and Derrick Lewis hits him with one of those right hooks, and that guy's lying face first on the canvas.
Yeah, his only two losses are both to Francis, right? Yeah.
Let me check on that.
Okay. But, I don't think that's the best matchup. My other ones that I had kind of thrown together, the winner of JDS versus Rosenstruik, that's a fun fight. Either of those guys are a fun fight. He hasn't fought Rosenstruik yet. He got knocked out by JDS back in 2019. And then the oddball one, Billy, that I pray for in my crazy MMA matchmaking head, Rumble Johnson versus Black Beast. Sign me the fuck up for that.
That's fun.
250-pound Rumble Johnson. That's big time fun. Do you figure out who his losses were to?
Yeah, both to Francis. Absolutely right. First one was early in both of their careers, and it was a doctor stoppage.
Yeah, it was back when Francis had dreadlock or cornrows, and then the second one, he got starched in China. I remember watching that at like 6 a.m. I think he got starched in like 20 seconds or something. So anyway, gigantic win for Black Beast. Black Beast, friend of the show. Anytime you want to come on the show, come on, bring it on. All right, Billy. Chris Weidman, former middleweight champ. Gets a win. Gets his first win since 2017. He had 3 straight losses, I believe. Got knocked out. Was it 3 or 2? He had 3 losses. 2 straight losses. So he got did he? He got finished by Jacare, knocked out by Don Reyes. But anyway, gets his first win since 2017 when he submitted.
He lost 3 of 4.
There we go.
3 of 4 because he beat Gastelum in between. Sorry.
There we go. So, I mean, really big for Chris Weidman to get a win. Obviously, the light heavyweight, thing didn't go as planned. He got starched by Dom Reyes. Now he's back at his former division. Picked up a win. I don't know, Billy. I wasn't very impressed. What did you think of it?
I thought he looked terrible, man. And I'm a Chris Weidman fan. Like, I'm watching this, wanting so badly for Chris to do what he did to Kelvin Gastelum, of just picking him up and dumping him on the canvas over and over and over again. And it's just not happening. His striking looks slow. I was not impressed.
What was with the Chris Weidman? What was with the Lyoto Machida impersonation? That was very strange. He had like this new found karate style to open up the first round, and then the second and third he decides to wrestle. It was kind of bizarre.
I didn't enjoy watching this fight at all. And I'm a humongous Chris Weidman fan. I'm the only person on earth who's happy that Chris Weidman knocked out Anderson Silva. I cheered when that happened. It was not fun to watch this, and I think the end is near for the All-American, unfortunately, and that's really sad to see because he's a guy who at one point was easily the best prospect that MMA had ever seen.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the end of the day, he got a win. That's very important. But outside of that, I don't see much of an upside for this version of Chris Weidman. I mean, he just looked old. He looked tired. He looked slow. The wrestling is still there. But any fight inside the top 10 right now, I think he gets finished in the first or second round. So, I'm kind of on board with you. I see maybe 1 or 2 more fights with big name guys, and we'll talk about that next. But I see like an Anderson Silva or a Luke Rockhold rematch, and then hang it up. There's no shot Chris Weidman's making a run to that title again, and this is how you turn into having kind of a Chuck Liddell finish to your career, where you're constantly chasing getting that belt back when it's just not there, and that's how you get caught, that's how you get knocked out, and that's how you put a bad stamp on a legendary career. So, that's kind of where I'm at on the whole Chris Weidman situation. But what do you want to see next for him?
I agree with you completely. I want to see. If I had to rank it, Anderson Silva trilogy is my number 1 choice, and then Luke Rockhold would be my second choice. And if he wins that, honestly, set him up with another rematch. Give him Jacare. Give him Yoel. And
please don't give him
that's
Yoel.
What
I don't want to see him die.
But if he wins 2 in a row, he's got to fight someone. Yoel's going to be 45 years old at that point. Chris Weidman is going to have to get knocked out again before he leaves this sport. It's the reality.
I agree. And the UFC is ruthless. They'll feed him. If he wants to keep fighting, they'll feed him Darren Till. They'll feed him Edward Shabazyan. And that's how you get just starched. And, those young guys build a name off you. It's Darwinism, survival of the fittest. And I don't want to see Chris Weidman go out like that. I totally agree with you. I see 1 more fight for him with either of those guys and then call it a day. There's nothing left to do. So, Chris Weidman got a win. Important there, but, not really didn't. It wasn't that impressive, honestly. Something that was impressive, Billy, our guy, Kevin Holland, puts on an absolute show again, talking shit and knocking dudes out the entire time. Thoughts on Kevin Holland? That was, man, must watch TV there.
Kevin Holland is the new Cowboy Cerrone. He is the next embodiment of Cowboy Cerrone, of that type of fighter, of that I will fight anyone, anywhere. I'm bored. I'm taking a fight. Kevin Holland is must-see TV. He's fights all the time. He's super exciting. He's great on the microphone. Give this guy Mike Perry. We as MMA fans deserve Kevin Holland against Mike Perry. Tell me that's not the perfect fight.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. Does Kevin Holland bounce back and forth between 170 and 185?
He's fought at both before. I've actually seen. First saw Kevin Holland in Gas Monkey Bar and Grill fighting for XKO in a Muay Thai fight. He knocked the guy out in 90 seconds. Kevin Holland's a maniac, dude. If anyone who's listening to this wants a hardcore Kevin Holland fight, go watch Kevin Holland against Jeff Neal on YouTube in the XKO promotion in Gas Monkey Bar and Grill. These guys fought. Both guys who are top contenders in the UFC now.
Yeah, he's really fun to watch. I just love his style. It's so exciting, and you never know what he's going to do. And then he's just constantly talking shit. The no crowd for a Kevin Holland fight's awesome. I wish they would just mic him up. Figure out a way to mic him up and hear exactly what he's saying the entire fight. Because he is just toying with that guy, and he was just torturing that poor guy. That guy looked strong. He was throwing some haymakers and bombs, but Kevin Holland's just so slick, and he's a very skilled fighter. So, what do you think's next for Kevin Holland?
Like I said, give me the Mike Perry versus Kevin Holland fight. I think that's so perfect, man. I think those guys. I think you could put that on pay-per-view for like $10, $15 and give those guys a cut, and they go out and sell the shit out of that thing.
Yeah. That's a really, really fun fight. So I'm down with that. Matchup-wise, I think he came in at like 20 or something in the rankings. I could see them matching him up with like Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori is a strong fighter. I think he's ranked like 14-ish. He'll talk a lot of shit too in his aggressive Italian accent. And then a kind of a dream fight for me right now would be Anderson Silva versus Kevin Holland. I think that's a super fun fight. Stylistically, that's a really, really cool fight. So that's kind of what I had on my radar there. But Kevin Holland, again, puts on another fight. I guarantee you he'll be back before the end of the year. So
here's a wild card for you,
keep an eye
Parker.
on that. Yeah.
Kevin Holland against Anthony Pettis at 170.
I'm totally down with that. That's awesome. That would be a fucking awesome fight. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm in. Sign me up, Billy. All right. So those were the three. Is that 3 cards? Yeah, 2 or 3 cards. 3 cards we missed.
3.
We've been gone a long time, Billy.
I know you're always on vacation.
People probably miss us. I'm a world traveler. All right. Now it's time for everyone's favorite segment of the show. We're going to go with Billy's hardcore minute to maybe 5 minutes, but Bellator is back in action, and Billy's excited about it. I'm really excited about it. I love Michael Chandler, one of my favorite fighters on the Bellator roster. So, Billy, get into it. Let's go.
Yeah, man. I think I'll give you a minute, and then we could get into the Michael Chandler stuff. But I just want to shout out Tim Johnson, best mustache in MMA. Guy shaves the mustache, knocks Matt Mitrione unconscious. Definitely his best win in Bellator. I think Mitrione shot. They've also announced we're going to do Juan Archuleta, one of Parker's favorite guys, is going to fight Patrick Mix, one of my favorite guys, up-and-coming prospect out of Bellator in the bantamweight division. That's going to be the title fight. And Sergio Pettis, who beat Ricky Bandejas, is going to be the number one contender for that. Both awesome. And the other thing is one of our guys, Curtis Millender, UFC convert, came over and lost a decision to one of the Bellator guys. Hold on, let me get his name real quick.
Courteous Curtis,
Yeah, he came out. He got wrestled, man. He got wrestled pretty bad, and guy held him on the canvas for a long time. Let me find this guy's name because I feel bad that I'm talking about him, but I'm not talking about him.
I feel like it was a very Russian name.
Sabah Homasi. Sabah Homasi.
All right. Keep your eye out for that guy.
But yeah, man. Let's talk about Michael Chandler.
Let's do it. Michael Chandler obviously kind of grew up, made his name in Bellator. He's had a lot of great fights in Bellator. He's been champion in Bellator. It's Michael Chandler's the guy that, ever since I got into MMA, you always play that game of, dream matchup with, Conor McGregor, Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson. You go down the list. I mean, you match Michael Chandler up with any of those guys, even at 34 years old. I mean, he's a tough out for anyone in that top 10 at the UFC 155 division. So, but the bottom line, he's at the end of his contract in Bellator. He's been there for I don't know how many fights, 15 fights or so. And basically he got on the mic after his knockout of Benson Henderson and said, hey, every lightweight on the planet is on notice, as well as Scott Coker, the owner of Bellator. He said, you're on notice. Let's get a deal done. So that kind of leads to the debate. Hey, is Michael Chandler going to the UFC? And if so, do you think now is the right time for him to go to UFC at 34 years old?
I think for his legacy, this is the time. Like, if he's really concerned and really believes like he can be the best lightweight in the world, be UFC champion, like this is the time that he's got to go. But what I will say is I think that's a risk for him because I don't see how he maximizes his financial value in the UFC.
Yeah, because I think the UFC is going to look at him as, hey, he's just another one of these top 10 guys. He's a Dan Hooker.
Lightweight fighters in the UFC, it's a dime a dozen, right? We talk all the time how deep that division is. He's not a heavyweight. He's not a flyweight who's getting big TV ratings, right? He's not a female fighter because those are the people where if those people draw, if the MMA fans truly believe that they're the best in the world, the UFC will empty their pockets to sign that person. Michael Chandler is a top 10 guy in the deepest division in the world.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's going to come down to money because we'll have to see how the UFC values him. Michael Chandler's probably looking at it as, hey, I have 3 to 4 years left. I think he's probably made a lot of money in Bellator. But if he went to Japan, he goes to Rise, and he goes to One, they're going to be paying him crazy money to put on some big fights. I mean, you got Eddie Alvarez over there. You've got who's the guy that knocked out Eddie Alvarez? You've got
Timothy Nastyukhin.
There you go. You've got some really good matchups over there and big paydays from Michael Chandler. I also think he's a guy that for the next 4 or 5 years could become the face of Ryzen or One Championship in that division. But I don't know. The competitor in him, I think, wants to go to the UFC. It's going to be, kind of that same thing of, Lima or Michael Venom Paige. It's like, hey, yeah, you dominated everyone in Bellator, but you never went to the UFC. You never made that jump to the UFC. Fedor, look at Fedor. The only thing that anyone can say bad about Fedor is, hey, he never made it to the UFC. The UFC's the number one show in town. It's the NFL. Bellator's the CFL or the XFL, So, yeah, I think the time is now. The time is now. You've got a 2 to 3 year window. Take a fight. You take a fight in that top, 5 to 10. You get a win. You're right in the top 5. You're one fight away from a title shot, I think, honestly. And Michael Chandler is a guy that he could take that division by storm. I went down the roster. We'll do it right now. But, I mean, you look at everyone in the top 10. It's a competitive fight. Michael Chandler versus Khabib. Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. That's a fucking banger. Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. Banger. Very competitive fight. Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chandler. Very, very competitive fight. Dan Hooker, you just go down the list. Everyone in the top 10, I think, maybe outside of Khabib right now, I think he has a decent chance of beating. So I don't see any downside to this. I think they'll be able to work out the money situation. And if he can get 1 or 2 fights and get himself in a title shot, Michael Chandler could be your UFC champion.
I just think, here's my thing. Number one, I think Khabib beats him. I think Gaethje beats him. I think Poirier beats him.
Yeah.
So everybody else, I think, is up for debate, right? I'm willing to listen. But those 3 guys, I think, are better than Michael Chandler. And here's my question.
Poirier and Gaethje, to me, that's almost 50-50. I think Poirier
100%.
Chandler's 50-50. Right now, Justin Gaethje versus Chandler, maybe 60-40 Gaethje, but they're very, very competitive.
And here's what I'll say about Chandler. He's got to decide, let's say he makes, 50, 75K from sponsors. He's probably looking at, $200,000, $100,000 to show, $100,000 to win in the UFC. Is he going to turn down getting that $200,000 guaranteed by a Bellator or one, and then being able to make $50,000 to $75,000 on top of that when, he's got a wife, he's got a kid at home, he owns a gym in Nashville. Is he going to turn down that guaranteed money for the lottery ticket of, I'm going to go to the UFC, hope that I can win 1 or 2 fights, get a title shot, and then maybe I win that and I'm UFC champion? And honestly, it's a tough question to ask a 34-year-old man who's been fighting in cages his whole life. But I think there's options for him. I think the Eddie Alvarez trilogy is interesting. I think Bellator doing like some sort of lightweight Grand Prix is interesting. And quite frankly, I think anyone in the top 10 in the UFC is interesting. So Michael Chandler's got a lot of options right now, and they're all good.
Yeah, and I think he's probably seen the ceiling of what he can make at Bellator, right? I mean, he was there when he was the guy in Bellator. Now they have a lot of guys. They got a lot of talent rising. So I don't know. Maybe it's the time for aging Michael Chandler to jump ship and get in the UFC and mix it up. And I see this a lot different than the Ben Askren situation. Ben Askren definitely came out of his prime. I think he came probably 4 to 5 years out of his prime. Michael Chandler looks like he's having a resurgence. The power is still there. The speed's still there. So, yeah, I'm totally down. I want him in the UFC so bad. Between him and Michael Venom Page and Lima, those 3 guys, I need to see them in the UFC at some point. But, all right, let's move on. So, if they do make the deal, make the move to the UFC, who's the first matchup for Michael Chandler?
I would love to see a Paul Felder or a Dan Hooker against Michael Chandler. I think that's the perfect welcome party for Michael Chandler in the UFC.
I agree. I'm totally down with that. Perfect matchup. They're going to be wars. I think I see Michael Chandler. He's not a global superstar. He's not probably the top 25 most famous MMA fighters on the planet. But if he can get in there and they promote him right and show his story, I think he's a guy that could become a big star very quickly in the UFC and could, give them probably 3 to 4 solid years. So I agree. I'm down with a fight like that. I think a Dan Hooker or a Paul Felder fight are very winnable for him at this time, and then we'll set him up with a gigantic top 5 fight. So, yeah. I'm totally down for the move to the UFC for Michael Chandler. Any closing words on that, Billy? That would be awesome to get him in the UFC before the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm just happy to see that he won his fight since he's ending his deal. I mean, tough one for Benson Henderson, but very, very impressive win by Michael Chandler. I mean, nobody knocks out Benson Henderson in the first round.
Has he ever been finished by knockout? Benson Henderson?
He has, I believe, at least once before.
Huh. Well, yeah, I mean, it's very, very hard to finish Benson Henderson. But, all right, we'll move on from that. So, this weekend, we've got the UFC returning the show to the Apex in Las Vegas. We've got a very big pay-per-view. DC versus Stipe, main eventing the card. Great fight, trilogy fight. You've got Suga Sean O'Malley making his return against Marlon Chito Vera. JDS taking on Rosenstruik. Let's see what else we got on here. We've got Jim Miller fighting again on the prelims. So a decent card. It's really pretty much all about the top three on the card. You've got those top 3 fights. It's kind of where it's at. But let's dive in. Let's start at the main event. So Stipe taking on DC for the trilogy. In my eyes, this is one of the biggest fights in UFC heavyweight history. It's one of the biggest trilogies probably in MMA history. There's just so much on the line for these guys. So let's get right into it. For DC, Billy, what do you think he needs to do differently to get the win here in this trilogy and in his career on a winning note and with another belt?
He's got to get in the clinch earlier, right? I mean, that's what he did in the first fight. That's how he landed the knockout. I mean, he's got to clinch. He's got to wear on Stipe. You know, he's got to use his wrestling and his dirty boxing. He's got to slow Stipe down, make him tired, and then land that knockout blow. And then defensively, you know, for the times where Stipe is able to keep him at distance, he's got to protect the body, because he just let Stipe have kind of open season on that body at the end of the fight, and that's what ultimately led to the knockout. So defensively, I think he's got to be a little more cognizant of how many shots he's taken to the body.
Yeah, and just shots in general. I think in that last fight, he was so confident on how the fight was going. That third and fourth round, he just got really complacent, and Stipe capitalized. I mean, I think Stipe hit him with 13 to 14 straight body shots. I watched that the other day in the airport coming home, and I was like, man, I forgot. He just hits him with body shot after body shot after body shot and then catches him with that right hand. So, I totally agree with that. For me, I think DC's got to push the pace. So they're fighting in the smaller cage. They're going to be in the 25-foot cage. I think that's a benefit for DC. It's going to make the space a lot smaller. Stipe is not going to be able to use that movement and that footwork as much. DC is going to be able to trap him. So I think it's important for DC to push the pace, you know, early and often. I agree with you. He needs to work clinches. He needs to make this fight dirty. He needs to basically close the distance, keep it close, use his dirty boxing. In the first and the second fight, DC does a great job of, he kind of just does this like weird hand fight with you. I think he started in the John Jones fight, but he does this hand fight with you, and then he'll catch you. He'll hit you with an overhand. He'll slip an elbow. You know, he's just very crafty with that hand fighting, and I think Stipe kind of obliged him in that second fight, and he was getting pieced up, you know, quite a bit in the first, second, and third round with that, because DC is just super tricky with it, and he catches you from weird spots with it. So I think he's got to do more of that. Use his wrestling. Obviously, the smaller cage is going to be an advantage to his grappling and wrestling. And then I agree with you. I think he needs to stick to the game plan. He's got to maintain his defense throughout, because Stipe is going to have more power. Stipe's got that stopping power. He's knocked, you know, a lot of heavyweights out, a lot of real, you know, lifelong heavyweights out. And I think it can come at any time. So DC, if he wants to win this fight, he's got to be super disciplined. He's got to keep his defense, you know, smart, and just stay safe as best he can and try to fight his fight. So, that's what I think DC's got to do. What about Stipe? What do you think he can improve on in this trilogy?
He's got to come out and he's got to start fast, right? He's got to establish the center of the octagon. He's got to use his boxing and his kicks to keep DC at range and basically stand in the center of that octagon and don't let Daniel Cormier get close to you. And then if he can do that for the first couple rounds, and maybe he wins a couple close rounds where, you know, he's not landing damage necessarily or landing power shots, but he's landing the majority of the strikes, DC starts realizing he's down on the scorecards. You know, maybe round 4, round 5, he's really got to go for it. He's got to sell out for the takedown. That's where Stipe capitalizes, where Cormier's a little worn down. He's a little tired. You know, he's mentally exhausted from all the striking defense. He gets sloppy and he gets caught. That's how Stipe is going to beat Daniel Cormier.
I agree. I totally agree. I think the biggest thing is where he hurts Stipe most, he can't hurt Stipe at distance. He just can't. He's the way the guys are built, the reach, the tools that DC brings. Stipe can dominate him and control the fight at distance. When he gets into those clinches and those dirty boxing fights, that's where he got caught in that first fight. That's where he was getting picked apart a little bit in the first 2 to 3 rounds of the second fight. So I think he's got to completely avoid those rounds. And how do you do that? You've got to use your movement. You've got to throw leg kicks, to keep DC from coming forward, throw leg kicks, and then use your boxing, use your range boxing combos. And I think that's what he's got to do, a lot of that. And then, early, I think he's got to work that body. He's got to wear DC down, work the body over and over again, keep going to it. And then he sets up beautiful boxing from that. He'll work the body, and then he throws a 3-piece combo to your head. So that's something to look out for. I think he needs to mix in his own wrestling. I think in the second fight, he took DC down once or twice, and that hasn't been done really ever since John Jones. I think John Jones is the only other person to take DC down. So use your own wrestling. Threaten the takedown, make it a real possibility, and use that to set up your striking. And then, that's pretty much it. So, I think those are the main keys for Stipe to get that belt wrapped around him again. We talked about this, but I think we both agree on this. I was going to ask you, who does a small cage benefit? Yeah, I think it's hands down DC.
Yeah, it's Daniel Cormier, right? His ability to get Stipe pressed up against that fence, use the clinch, uses his wrestling trips and his kind of lateral drops and all those takedowns he likes to do. It's perfect in the small cage. I actually think that's kind of one of the only chances or one of the biggest benefits that Daniel Cormier has in this fight.
I agree. All right, let's talk about this trilogy as a whole. What is your opinion on this trilogy? Is this one of the most important trilogies in MMA history and in UFC history?
I don't think so, honestly. I think it's a particularly important fight. I don't think the trilogy itself is that important because I think this trilogy has been just so compressed, right? Like it feels like such a short trilogy. Like the way that we've had MMA trilogies in the past is kind of these long, drawn-out rivalries. Those are the best ones. So, like, for me, Rampage versus Vanderlei is the best one. That's the best trilogy we've ever had, hands down, in MMA. And
they fought 4 times, right? Did they fight 4 times?
Well, the fourth is in Bellator, and it's old man fight. But, like, I think for me, it feels like watching a movie on fast forward a little bit. But this particular fight is super important.
I agree. It's just like, the trilogy, you want heat. You want John Jones versus DC. You want that rivalry, Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz. And you have it a little bit here. It's just like neither of these guys is a big shit talker. They're both pretty respectful. I think there's been some frustration in getting fights done, especially when DC won the belt and he wanted to fight Brock Lesnar. And never materialized, and then you've got Stipe on the shelf for over a year trying to get his belt back. So there's a little animosity there, but it's nothing like the big rivalries of the sport. But I agree with you. This is a gigantic fight for the legacy of these guys and for the heavyweight division legacy. Because I think outside of Fedor, these guys are 1 and 2, right behind Fedor as the best heavyweights of all time in the sport. So, I think for their legacy, it's huge. And it feels big. It does feel like a big fight. It really does. So, for the winner of this fight, whoever gets it done, where do you rank them all time in the heavyweight division?
Luke Thomas has a really good, kind of clip about this whole argument. But Fedor in this sport is almost unassailable in how epic a figure he is. A guy who went undefeated for 10 years, fought in Pride, and just the mythology around Pride and what that represented for the sport is just so different from how we think about MMA today. It's like trying to compare Babe Ruth and Mike Trout, right? Like it's so it's so different. This sport, I feel like, grew up so fast in terms of how quickly it gained mainstream appeal. And so I just think, like, if you ask me to match up Fedor, either currently or in his prime, with DC or Stipe, who are in their prime, I'd probably pick DC or Stipe, but I don't think any heavyweight will ever have the career that Fedor had, and like really embodying that baddest man on the planet, persona. Like, Fedor was terrifying, man. Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic are not terrifying. They're amazing fighters, but they don't have that mystique. And Fedor did. And like, that's just, you're not going to overcome that by winning fights, because at that point it's not really even about fights. It's just about your perception as a fighter. And I just think that's really hard to overcome. That being said, whoever wins this fight has the best UFC heavyweight resume of all time.
100%. And, I mean, for DC, if he can get a win, I mean, in my opinion, he's got to go down as a top 5 fighter. He's got the losses to John Jones, but if you can get past that and just see the resume and the career that this dude's put together at 2 weight classes, and this is a guy that, I personally think he's a better fighter at heavyweight. I think if he was,
I agree.
If he decided to stick to heavyweight for his whole career, he obviously was best friends with Cain Velasquez, who was the former UFC heavyweight champion of the world. That's why DC didn't fight in that division. But I mean, if DC fought that division the whole time, I mean, he could have been a long reigning champion, and I think we would look at DC's career a lot different. He's always kind of going to be that guy that just couldn't beat John Jones. And if he loses here to Stipe, that's just going to solidify him as just kind of like a second tier champion. It's like that guy that was just, he was always there, but he's always second place. And I think that would be, that'd be devastating to DC to end his career like that. But that's kind of where we're at. I think it's either, he's a for sure top 5 fighter, or, he's around the top 10 or so. So this is a huge fight for the legacy of DC. For Stipe, I'm kind of torn about this. I haven't heard him talk a lot about retirement, but I don't know why I have it in my head that I think he may, if he wins this, he may retire. He may be done. And, I think he's got more to give. I really do. I think he's a little younger. He's got, the heavyweight division is old. So if Stipe could hang around and put, 2 to 3 more title defenses together, that's going to put him right up there with Fedor. When you can compare their legacy and their record at the end of time, or at the end of their careers. So, this is a big one, Billy. This is really, really big. What are your thoughts on kind of where you put these two guys, depending on how Saturday night goes?
I think with Stipe, right? I mean, literally no one, if he can beat Daniel Cormier, literally no one would have his resume, almost including Fedor. Like, the fact that he's beat Cormier, Overeem, Dos Santos, Francis. I mean, it's honestly, like, it's a very ridiculous resume. Like, when you look at the scalps that he's taken, I think the thing that's hard to evaluate about DC's resume, right, is like, all the time at light heavyweight, I mean, he beat Gustafsson and he beat Rumble Johnson, and those are kind of his marquee wins at that division. His heavyweight work is all in Strikeforce, right? Like, it's all outside the UFC. So when you're evaluating it, it's like, it's not that I'm discounting Strikeforce, which I think was a phenomenal promotion and every bit as good as the UFC at the top, and it's been proven. Like, I just think it's really hard to evaluate DC's legacy, and it's really just, it's a unique look. And there's kind of an argument that he fought in shallow divisions, but being able to beat Stipe, who is unquestionably the best heavyweight of his division, kind of makes Daniel Cormier the best heavyweight of his generation, right?
100%. And I while you were going off about DC, I was looking at Fedor's record. He won 29 fights in a row. That's crazy at heavyweight. And you look at the competition, there's big names in there, on that run. But yeah, I agree with you. This is pivotal for both guys' careers. Man, I'm excited for this one. All right, so where's my next question? What if Stipe gets a win here? Where are you at on the Stipe retirement?
He apparently had a retina injury after the last fight. Heavyweight fights typically don't result in guys.
It was from the first fight where DC poked him in the eye, and I'll never forget this. He poked him in the eye, and Stipe just kept. He didn't stop. He didn't take the doctor's stoppage, and then he gets knocked out 30 seconds later. So I think it's from that, but yeah.
But I always worry when a guy's got an eye injury, right? Like, you only get one pair of eyes. You got to live with those the rest of your life. And so, the guy's 36. He's got a daughter. He's made a bunch of money as the heavyweight champion of the world. I don't think he'll ever have to buy a beer in Cleveland ever again. He seems pretty happy with his life as a firefighter. I think that guy could walk away and say, I accomplished everything, and also not have to fight Francis Ngannou again. I mean, that's a pretty nice benefit, huh?
I think that's the biggest thing. I think if Francis wasn't there, you see Stipe hanging around and, defending that title maybe to 38, 39, and then try to hang it up on his, go out, with that belt, which is very, very hard to do in MMA. But yeah, I don't see any reason to fight Francis again, especially after he's just starching everyone. And for his legacy, yes, he'll be one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But if he beats DC and then comes back and gets knocked down 30 seconds against Francis Ngannou, which is totally possible, I don't know what that does. What does that do? Set up another trilogy? Does that set up a trilogy against Francis?
Why would you do that, though? If you're Stipe, that sounds like I'm setting myself up to get knocked out twice. What if Stipe ends up the only guy to really beat Francis Ngannou? To legitimately engage and beat Francis Ngannou. Talk about a legacy builder. He beats DC. He's got the most heavyweight title defenses ever. He beat the boogeyman in Francis Ngannou. He walks away. That's a Hall of Famer, man. That is a Hall of Famer. That is the best UFC heavyweight to ever grace the octagon. You're not going to improve your legacy. Unless the only thing, you want to know what keeps Stipe from retiring? If John Jones is coming up to heavyweight to fight Stipe Miocic, if I'm Stipe, I'm getting it up for one last fight, and then I'm retiring.
Can you imagine if he hangs around and fights John Jones, beats John Jones, and then has a second fight with Francis and beats Francis? Then he's in Fedor territory. Then you're him and Fedor are 1A, 1B. If he can put those together,
he's in GSP territory at that point. Ask. If he beats John Jones and beats Francis again, that is the greatest fighter we have ever seen.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, if Stipe is hungry and wants to hang around, he kind of flies under the radar, but that could happen. That could really happen. So yeah, gigantic fight this weekend. I'm pumped for this one. I like both of these guys, so it's going to be hard either way. But both of them, they've made a lot of money. DC is going to continue to make a lot of money with TV and the radio personality, or the personality that he is for the UFC, and I think it'll all be good. But this is a huge fight this weekend for their legacy. So everyone, check that out. That's Saturday. That's the main event. All right. In the co-main event,
wait.
Suga Sean O'Malley. What?
Prediction.
You want a prediction? Third round knockout, Stipe.
I got Stipe, fourth round knockout.
Yeah, I'm gonna feel so bad when that happens to DC, but I just don't see DC beating Stipe. I don't. So,
I agree.
It sucks for DC. It really does. If he ends up 1B and 1B to John Jones and Stipe, that sucks. But it is what it is. It's cage fighting. Let's quit being so sensitive. All right. All right, Billy. Co-main event. Big spotlight here for really both of these guys. Suga Sean probably a little more so because the UFC is probably pushing him more than Chito Vera. But, man, this is a very, very close matchup. I think both of these guys are super talented. They're younger guys. They're on their way to the top 10 of that bantamweight division right now, which is absolutely stacked. Billy, how pumped are you for this fight?
I can't wait, man. I think this is a worthy co-main event, honestly. Both these guys are action fighters. They both bring it. Chito Vera is a wizard on the ground. I mean, just stellar. His jiu-jitsu's unbelievable. Suga Sean is striker extraordinaire, best hair in MMA. I mean, both of these guys, I'm super excited for this fight.
So, for the bantamweight division, we've talked about this probably on every episode, but in our opinion, bantamweight is probably one of the best divisions in the UFC right now. What is the significance of this fight for the bantamweight division?
I think it's a crossroads fight for these guys, right? It's either Suga Sean keeps on this meteoric rise or Chito Vera disrupts it and goes on his own quest through the top 10. I mean, Chito Vera's only loss is in the UFC is Song Yadong. It was a very close fight. I think he could easily kind of turn it around with a win against Suga Sean here. And then Suga Sean is a guy who is seemingly unstoppable at bantamweight right now, and he's knocking everybody out.
Especially since his comeback. He had that weird, what was it, he had a drug suspension. He had the...
tainted supplement.
The same thing as John Jones, right? Essentially?
Not the same drug. No, not the same drug.
Okay. But anyway, he had that huge boost off the Dana White Contender Series. I think he had 3 wins in a row. And then he gets that drug test, and he's out for 2 years. And I honestly think when we look back at Suga Sean 10 years from now, that's going to be one of the best things that ever happened to him. He's kind of filled into his frame, which is ridiculous for that weight class. I think he's, it's 5'11", but he's super, super long for that weight class. And he's bulked up and kind of, grown into that frame. And then I think he's just improved a lot. I think he was, he got suspended and he was working that whole time. And the improvement from the Contender Series to his last fight against crazy mustache guy, what's his name?
Eddie Wineland.
Eddie Wineland. It was stuck on the tip of my tongue. But has been night and day. I mean, he's just, in my opinion, the level of competition hasn't been there quite yet. He's there now where he's knocking on that door of the top 10. But, I mean, I think he's one of the best strikers, most exciting strikers on the roster. So, for both of these guys, I mean, this is a huge fight. The next fight after this, you're getting a top 10 bantamweight. And then after that, you're into the top 5. And then you're maybe 1 or 2 fights away from the title. So, big time.
Well, and here's the thing. So, He's fighting a guy, we know Suga Sean is such a great striker. He's so creative. He's a fast starter. He comes out, he hits you in the face with a spinning kick right off the opening bell. But Chito Vera is a guy who, the second he gets that fight to the ground, this guy is not a lay and pray fighter. He is hunting submissions constantly. He's looking to strangle people. He's looking to break limbs. Like, this is a very violent guy on the ground, which is kind of rare in the UFC that you see a guy who's so brazenly hunting for submissions so constantly like Chito Vera is. So it's not just striker versus grappler to me. It's like very energetic striker versus very energetic grappler. Both these guys kind of have electric styles within their respective domains and are not bad in the other parts of the MMA game, but just have such dynamic striking and ground game that this fight is going to be action-packed, in my opinion.
Yeah, Chito Vera's now got 9 wins in the UFC, 8 of them being finishes. Suga Sean's got 5 wins, 3 of them being finishes. In the decision wins, he put on a show. I mean, so this is one of those fights, Billy, there's no way this fight sucks. This is going to be awesome. Big stakes on this one. So let's get into the technicality here of the fight. Talk a little bit about Chito Vera and kind of his biggest strengths and what he's got to do to win this fight.
Like I said, he's very good on the ground. He's very fluid in moving his striking into his ground game. So this is a guy who's got to force this fight to the ground. He's got to make Sean use the jiu-jitsu he's been working on and know that Chito probably has the advantage there and try and get to some submissions because, as we've seen, Sean is not a guy to be messed around with on the feet. So the faster Chito can get this fight to the ground, not that he's a bad striker, but he's not on the level of Sean O'Malley. He needs to get the fight to the ground, and then he can really take care of business.
Yeah. For me, I think Jason Perillo's in his corner. I love Jason Perillo as a coach, Michael Bisping's coach, Chris Cyborg's coach. He's worked with a lot of people. So that's a huge advantage to have that knowledge and experience in your corner with such, a young kind of diverse fighter that can do, everything. So that's a big advantage. His fight IQ, I heard Jason Perillo talk about this. He's like, Chito Vera is one of the smartest, most dynamic finishers, I've ever coached. Chito Vera is a guy, if he has you hurt on the feet, on the ground, whatever, if he sees any opportunity, he's going for the finish. He wants to finish fights. So that's a big strength for him. And yeah, I'll agree with you. He's great on the ground. He has he's very aggressive on the ground is what I'll say. And that's, I think that'll be interesting because, Suga Sean's ground game is, that's all he talks about is, hey, when I got suspended, I was 100% about jiu-jitsu. So that'd be interesting to see him kind of get dragged into deep waters a little bit and test all of his skills and really see what Suga Sean's made of. And hey, is he a real contender at bantamweight, or is he this flashy guy that's been knocking out, the lower end of the bantamweight division? So, yeah. For Suga Sean, what do you think he's got to do to get this done?
He's got to start fast. I mean, he's always been known as a fast starter, and he's known as a creative striker. But I think he's so benefited from the fact that he comes out and he's throwing crazy stuff right off the opening bell. He's not giving these guys time to read feints. He's not giving these guys time to read kind of how to block his strikes, how to dodge his strikes. He's just coming out and giving you the kitchen sink from the get-go. And I think that's the way to beat Chito Vera. You got to avoid those deep waters. Chito's got no problem going deep into that third round, taking you down, having some grinding, grueling rounds on the floor. Sean's got to come out and kick this guy right in the face, hit him with punches, look for the chin, look for the knockout, and kind of do the flashy stuff that got him to the dance, because I think that's Sean O'Malley's biggest advantage is coming out fast, doing unconventional stuff, and not giving your opponent time to read what you're going to do.
I totally agree. I think Sean is best when he's controlling the fight. So he's leading the dance. He's staying at his range, his distance, where he can hurt you and you can't hurt him, which he's going to have that ability on a lot of these guys just because his frame and how long he is and how diverse his striking is. So I think that's important. He's got to set the distance and keep it and manage that distance throughout the fight. The footwork, the movement, both offensively and defensively, he's incredible. His I think you're going to watch him. His defensive movement is going to be up there probably with John Jones is kind of how I see it. I mean, just from watching his last couple fights, it's incredible. The dude barely gets hit. He got caught once in the Eddie Wineland fight, but besides that, I mean, the dude doesn't get hit a lot. He's sharp. He's elusive. He's hard to track down and hard to hit.
It reminds me of Izzy Adesanya, but on fast forward, because bantamweight is so much faster than middleweight. But it's just his ability to – it's that kind of long karate style defense where he's able to be very elusive and stay at range and kind of never let his opponent into his range.
Yeah, and then I think his striking – I'm going to come out and say it. I think his striking is one of the best on the entire roster. It's just he's just got that kind of it factor. He's got that precision striking where it takes one from him to put you away, and that means Chito Vera's got to be very, very disciplined. Chito Vera cannot get into a brawl with Suga Sean O'Malley. He's going to get put to sleep. So the precision striking, the many different ways he can hurt you, straight right, spinning kicks, flying knees. I mean, everything's coming at you, like you said. And then I think his mindset is incredible for someone his age and his experience in the UFC. I've been saying it for the last year, 2 years, but he's got that aura about him. He's got that Conor McGregor confidence where he walks in, he's super calm, nothing phases him. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He just stays kind of even keel, and he keeps that stoner calm about him. And I really think that's we're going to see that put to test this week for the first time, because Chito Vera is going to bring the action to him. And then, I just had more on managing distance, and he does that really, really good with his kicks. He's great at teeps, high kicks, low kicks. He mixes it up really good, but that's what I think we need to see from Suga Sean. So we kind of talked about this already. How would you see Chito Vera winning this fight?
Like I said, he's got to get it to the ground. He's got to get either a submission or a decision win where he's able to kind of not hold Sean down, but put him in compromised positions on the ground and force him to utilize that jiu-jitsu game that he's been working on. That's the route to victory. I don't see a way that, even though I think Chito is a good striker, I don't see a way that he keeps it on the feet and beats Sean O'Malley at his own game.
Yeah, I think that's a recipe for disaster for Chito Vera. If he goes in there and just tries to have a war from the first round on, he's going to get put to sleep. So I agree with you. I think he's got to drag Sean to deep waters. We haven't seen Sean drag to deep waters, so it'd be a nice test and a nice, just fight to see where really both of these guys are. So it's a big one for Sean. Like I said, manage distance. Try to lure Chito into an aggressive fight, into a brawl, and pick him apart with your counters. And then I want to see Suga Sean's jiu-jitsu. I really do. They talk so much about it. So I think it would be really interesting once this fight hits the ground, just that battle, that kind of chess match on the ground. So I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. But Billy, prediction, what do you got?
You know what? I'm going to come out and say it. I think this kid is special, man. Suga Sean, first round KO. I really do. I don't say that about a lot of guys. There's a few guys that I really believe in, and he's one of them. I don't see Chito being able to close the distance with Sean. I think Sean is, like you said, so good at managing the distance, and if he can keep you upright and keep you at distance, it's only a matter of time before you're going to sleep. I got him by first round KO.
I think this one's going to get pushed into the second round. Chito Vera is a tough guy. He's going to come ready. He's hungry as well. He wants to get this win, derail the hype train. So I think we're going to get a wild first round, and then I think Sean puts him to sleep in the second round. I agree with you. I think this kid's got something about him. I compare him most to Conor McGregor. He's like a mix of Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya, and I think if he gets a big knockout here, this is a big stage. You're going to have probably 1 million plus pay-per-view buys for the main event. And I think Suga Sean's on a rocket ship to the moon if he gets a vicious knockout here, especially if it's anything like that Eddie Wineland one. Just some awesome, just walk-off KO or a spinning head kick or something crazy. So, I'm on board, Billy. Suga Show has arrived. Everyone needs to tune into the co-main event on Saturday. All right, Billy. So this fight, obviously, a big fight, really big fight. Where do you see the winner going from here?
Someone in the top 10. I like fights with Dom Cruz or Jose Aldo. Kind of that building the name off the legend. From a contender standpoint, I'd be interested in like a Jimmy Rivera or a Rafael Assunção. I think both of those are interesting fights, but anyone in the top 10 I would be fine with. Yeah,
I kind of think those guys are probably one fight away from the Assunçãos or the Jimmy Riveras. I think the next move is you build off a superstar. So you've got Dominic Cruz, you've got Uriah Faber, you've got Jose Aldo, especially if it's Suga Sean. If it's Suga Sean, you push him to get a win against a big name like that, and then after that, it's top 5 title shots. that's all for Suga Sean. For Chito, I think he'll just kind of fight the next guy up. I don't think the UFC is going to get behind him like they would Suga Sean. So that's kind of what I see next. What did we do, Billy? All right, JDS versus Jairzinho Rosenstruck. Give me your thoughts on that fight.
You know what? It's two guys with huge power at heavyweight. I think it's a huge fight. I think it's very important for the heavyweight division. I'm excited to watch it. I think it's kind of, you got to show me something out of Jairzinho, and then JDS, it's can he make one more run at the title, right?
Yeah, I agree. Rosenstruck's he's gonna want to get that last fight back where he got starched by Francis and make a big statement. And then I do think he's a guy, especially in the heavyweight division, he can knock a lot of people out. So this is another fight, Billy. This is not gonna suck. This is gonna be a very fun fight, fast-paced fight. Bigi Boi's the guy. I watched a documentary on him earlier this week, and his coaches all just rant and rave about his cardio for 5 rounds. They said that guy, you can't get him tired. So I think this is a fight that's probably going to go into the second and third round just because JDS is so super tough. But I got Bigi Boi. I think Bigi Boi gets a knockout here, rebounds, throws himself back into the conversation in the top 5 at heavyweight, and then maybe see Bigi Boi versus the Black Beast next. And then that's a crazy fight. So who do you got in that one?
I got JDS, and I bet you a 6-pack of beer on it for the listeners.
Done. All right, done. Write it down. Someone write it down. All right, current events, Billy, and then let's get out of here. We're not doing good on time this week. All right, let's get started. Cody No Love gets the next shot at the flyweight title. I think you and I have been shouting for this for 6 months? But
yeah,
I'm absolutely
and you
pumped
know what,
about
Parker?
this. Yeah.
I can't believe the outrage, man. I agree with you. I'm pumped about this. I love this fight. I think this is an amazing stylistic fight. I think it's if Cody No Love can make 125 pounds, I think it's legitimately the 2 best flyweights on the planet. I don't see anything not to like about this. And it was met with such disdain, and I don't understand what these people want out of flyweight.
Yeah, come on. All the flyweight social justice warriors, take it easy. Take it easy. A year ago, you were calling for the flyweight division to be banned. Now we have this banger of a matchup between Cody Garbrandt and the God of War with his red stripe hair. And come on. What else are you going to do? What are you going to do? Kai Kara France
it's a great
versus
fight.
the red stripe? Come on. Yeah, it's a banger. It's fucking awesome. It's a win-win. And it's huge for the UFC as well that seem like they were kind of on the same train. They want to get rid of the flyweight division. Let's get rid of Mighty Mouse. Let's get rid of King Henry, and let's get rid of all the flyweights. But now we're back in the flyweight business because we've got a fun champion, and we've got Cody Garbrandt. If he can go down there, that could be a trilogy fight at flyweight. That could be a banger at flyweight. So I'm pumped about that. I don't see the outrage. Come on, everyone, get your mind right. This is going to be an awesome one.
Grow up, Peter Pan.
All right. Yeah, come on. All right, for Cody, I think you and I totally agree here. If he can get this belt, I think he runs the flyweight division for the next however long he wants to and however long he can make that weight. And then he gets a lot of fun fights. He could bounce back and forth to 135. We could see King Henry coming back to get his belt back from Cody. There's a lot of fights you can make for the UFC here.
I also think if Davison can beat Cody, I think he starts to build his name. This reminds me of Joanna against Weili Zhang, and we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, so I don't get any of the pushback here. The UFC obviously they're going to keep making fights. If these two guys can put on exciting fights, they're going to keep that flyweight division. They're going to promote it. They're going to keep it rolling. But for the UFC, I think if Cody gets that belt, we're going to have a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of fun fights. So that's a big one. That's in October, I believe. Another one, Robbie Lawler steps in late notice to take on the guy we talked about earlier, Dallas's own Jeff Neal, who was slotted to take on Neil Magny. Neil Magny, I think, pulled out. So That's a great fight.
No, Jeff Neal had a hospitalization. I hope he feels better.
Sorry, wrong way. Yeah, my bad. I screwed up on that. We're an hour and 25 minutes in. I'm losing my fucking mind. All right, yeah, Robbie Lawler taking on Neil Magny. Late notice. Tough draw for Robbie Lawler. Fun fight, but you and I are both very high on Neil Magny. I think he's very, very underrated for what he brings to the table. He's one of those. He's got kind of that Tony Ferguson, mentality that he's just well rounded. He's going to drag you to deep waters. He's going to break you eventually, and that's what he's done recently. I think he came off a year layoff, and ever since then he's just looked awesome in every one of his fights. So that's going August 29th, but watch out for that. That's going to be a really, really fun fight. Anything to add on that one?
Yeah. I'm nervous every time Robbie Lawler fights from now until the end of his career, to be honest, because I love Robbie Lawler, but I haven't thought he looked good in quite some time.
Yeah, I agree. It's similar to Chris Weidman, how I feel about Chris Weidman, but it's not that bad. I mean, Robbie's still putting on competitive fights, and you want to watch him fight because he brings the action like he always does. But yeah. I don't think that's a great matchup for him. I'll say that. All right, breaking news today, Billy. Your and mine top one ever hottest MMA fighter of all time, Paige VanZant. Sports Illustrated's own Paige VanZant makes a move to Bare Knuckle FC. Billy, I don't like this. I don't like this one bit.
Well, first of all, I want to clarify that Paige VanZant is my number 2 behind Paulo Costa for hottest MMA fighter. I don't like this move, but here's the thing. In this sport, take the money up front. Take it short term. Go contract to contract. Don't think about what's best for my long term, blah, 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 blah. That's not the way to maximize your value. So if Paige VanZant is going to get paid over $1 million for 4 fights in Bare Knuckle FC, which is the reported number, I'm totally down for this. Like, I don't think the competition's that tough. I think Paige VanZant's weakness as a fighter is in the grappling world, not the striking world. So, you know what? If she's making that kind of money, let her go for it. Though I tell you what, I don't like the move. I don't really like bare knuckle fighting. And I want Paige VanZant to do well because I think she's a good person.
I do too. I would have rather see her go to Bellator or One or Ryzen or something like that where they can build a division around her, promote her, make her a big star, and just kind of capitalize on what could have been in the UFC. Because I think the UFC was on board, and then she just got hit with injuries and losses, and it just kind of fizzled out. And I think she's got a big enough following where she can be a big star. I'm just not super excited to see it in bare knuckle boxing. I'm really not at all. We're gonna have Paige VanZant headlining a thug. A Hick Diaz card, it's just like, I don't know about bare knuckle boxing, but I guess we'll see. how it'll shake out. And then the other piece of breaking-ish news, I think Colby and Tyron is done.
It's done.
Is that done?
It's happening.
Yeah, I feel this reminds me of Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao. Like this should have happened 3 years ago. It should have happened 3 years ago. I don't like this matchup for Woodley right now. I just think Colby is, although he did come off a war with Usman, I think he's in his prime. I think Woodley's on his way out. I just think you're going to see more of what you saw the last 2 fights, the Usman fight and the Gilbert Burns fight. I think Colby's going to overwhelm Tyron, and I think he's going to retire him. That's what I see. And then Donald Trump's going to win the election, and Colby's going to double down and just get crazier. So I hate this fight for Tyron. I love that we're finally getting it. It's one of those that's 3 years too late, but we're going to get it before Tyron retires. I don't know, Billy. I don't have a good feeling about this fight for Tyron.
None of those things are going to happen, right? Tyron Woodley is now motivated. He's back. He's knocking out Colby Covington, knocking him out cold.
He said Donald that on Trump's the last fight, and he got starched.
It's over. It's over, Park. The whole gimmick's going to be over. It's going to be so sad for the Colby populace because the whole gimmick will be over. All in the blink of an eye. Just watch. Just sit back and watch. Enjoy the show. Tyron Woodley is back motivated, man. He's back. He's coming back.
He said that the last fight. Coming back, he's 38 years old and threw like 7 punches in his last 2 fights. Come on.
It only takes one, pal.
Okay, we'll double down. We'll make another bet here. If Tyron Woodley defeats Colby Covington, I'll buy you anything you want in reasonable taste. If Colby wins Tyron, you're buying me my choice of whiskey that I can drink on this show. You got it. It's not happening, Billy. You're living in La La Land. You're living in just fantasy world. It's not going to happen. Tyron Woodley's shot. He's shot. He's done.
Colby Covington doesn't have a gym. He doesn't have a gym. He doesn't have coaches. He's too busy paying women off Craigslist.
Those are pretty good-looking Craigslist women. Those might be higher. Those may be back pages. I don't think that's Craigslist. But I don't know. I'm excited for that fight. We're going to debate that fight. I'm going to die on my Colby Covington porch. Yeah, I think he's going to be your champion. Colby Covington will be your champion by the end of 2021. Am I crazy?
You're out of your mind. We're at 90 minutes. You're losing it. You had too many hot toddies. Tell the people to like, rate, and subscribe, and let's get the hell out of here because you've lost it.
All right, hour 30 minutes. That may be a show record. And we only talked about 3 fights on the main event. All right, Parker's MMA, episode 44. Signing out. Everyone like, subscribe, vote for Donald Trump on the election. Colby Covington going to run as his vice president. Colby Covington, if he gets the title, he's running 2024. He'll be the president. He'll be Donald Trump's successor. All right, guys.
He's going to lose to Kamala Harris.
I'm tired. I'm getting loopy. I got to go to sleep. Billy, any closing words?
No, I have none. I have no words for what transpired at the end of that episode.
Billy's going to go have a drink. All right. Coronavirus will be done by the Colby Covington fight, too. Signing out. See y'all later.
Texas Trees is the premier tree care company in the DFW area. Whether you need basic maintenance or specialized services, when it comes to trees, we've got you covered. Pruning, chipping, bracing, and cabling, even root barriers and disease control, we do it all. And if you aren't sure what you need, we have certified arborists on staff to point you in the right direction. Visit us at northtexastrees.net. That's northtexastrees.net. Thanks for listening to Parker's MMA Show. Take a moment to rate and review on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast, and visit ParkerKeen'sMMAShow.podbean.com for additional information on Parker and to stay up to date on the latest drama in the fight world. For more information and important links about today's episode, check out the show notes.